Pokémon is a really important franchise to me. It's my favorite video game series ever. Its throne is number one, never being threatened. And it's been a part of my life since I was a baby. I was born in 2000, which was the year that Crystal version came out in Japan. Pokemon as a franchise grew up alongside me, and my relationship with the series has gone through many changes, while still being full of love and passion. As we all know, Pokemon is an RPG, and I personally think the series is one of the best of the genre when it comes to the literal act of role-playing. You create your own OC, the simplistic plot of most games lend you the tools to be imaginative and make up your own storyline for your trainer. There's recreational activities that make you further immersed in each region, and of course, the Pokemon themselves are vital pieces of role-playing whose mere existence on your team can speak an entire novel about who your character is. Today, I want to talk your ear off about the aforementioned recreational activities. Namely, one particular item that is one of the most important items in the series' history. The berry. For most of my life, I didn't really care about going above and beyond with my files. I did contests, though never getting too far in any category, and I dabbled in some side content per game, like decorating my secret base one time, but I was definitely one of the many kids who experienced Pokemon games in a simple, streamlined way. Hell, I'll be honest and admit that I didn't even beat the Pokemon League in a lot of my childhood playthroughs. With that being said, at 24 years old, the way I play Pokemon games now is completely different than how I used to play them. Of course, I actually finish my playthroughs, but I also engage with the series' features and mechanics more intimately than before. I attempt post-game challenges, I shiny hunt, I occasionally build teams for online play, and I have become obsessed with side activities. I don't actually 100% the games by definition, but I give myself a personalized list of goals to accomplish with each playthrough, like catching all the unknown or getting all Pokeathlon medals. Pokemon Sword and Shield were the floodgates to this newfound love, as I became really invested in the camp feature. My friends and I were all on our journeys to the league, collecting badges and catching Pokemon, but I was the one who made it a mission to complete the Curry Dex, get all the toys available for camping, and had a strict daily routine of going around all the wild areas to collect berries every single day. This gave me a realization. Berries are more or less the most important item in Pokemon's main side content, and they play a bigger role in the role-playing and world-building within the series that I hadn't realized sooner. So, today, I want to give you a big old history lesson about the berries of Pokemon and how they and their in-game mechanics changed over the years. Berries were introduced to us in 1999 with the Generation 2 games. Coming off of Red, Blue, and Yellow, Game Freak got to realize all their ideas and concepts for Pokemon that they couldn't achieve of Gen 1. One of those ideas that came with the Johto region was held items, and berries were made to help show off this new feature by acting as a variant of the Pokemart medicines that your Pokemon can hold and use automatically in battle. You can get some berries every day by picking them from various trees across the region, alongside apricorns. Side note about apricorns, while they stayed relevant to Johto in the remakes via Pokeathlon and Kurt, berries would come to take their spot as a device for side content going forward. Apricorns are kind of like distant cousins to berries. At this time, berries did not have a unique design, and had different names than what we know them as today. The cherry berry was simply called Paralyzed Cure Berry, Chesto Berry was Mint Berry, Oran Berry was Berry, so on and so forth. While the names were different, they served the same purpose that they do now, but there's one berry in this Gen 2 crowd with a interesting history, the Miracle Berry. On the surface, it's nothing special, just a predecessor of the Lumberry, but it's one of the most elusive items in the franchise. You can only get it through two methods, a possible reward via mystery gift, which is extremely rare, or by getting 600 watts in Pokemon Pikachu GS2, a pedometer from 25 years ago that is now a hefty price on eBay. The Miracle Berry is not the only one to be extremely rare to get, but I'll get to talk about other elusive berries later in the video. While these pixelated fruits were simply battle items in their debut games, it was in Generation 3 where our lovable, multicolored friends became what we know them as today. Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald would introduce a completely overhauled berry system with the introduction of berry plants. Similar to the trees from Johto, but now you get to plant, grow, and harvest your own crops. Alongside this new feature was the inclusion of 33 new berries, all with unique names, designs, and characteristics. This includes our original 10 from Gen 2, for a combined total of 43 berries. Their identity as held items remain true, but the region of Hoenn also introduced a feature that berries play a vital role in: contests. Contests, for those unaware, are a form of side quests in the 3rd and 4th generation Pokémon games, where you enter your Pokémon in competitions of aesthetic prowess against others, earning ribbons and working to become the ultimate contest idol. To do better in any given category, you need to feed your Pokémon Pokéblocks, the in-universe equivalent of Starbursts, that will raise the aesthetic value of your Pokémon in one of 5 categories. How do you get these Pokéblocks? You gotta make them, and the ingredient for making Pokéblocks is berries. So, berries serve a purpose as not only held items for battles, but also as a key component for the game's major side content. Then there's the plants, which are not only a way of successfully getting more berries for your inventory by planting 1 in the soil to get 2 to 4 in return, but also as a way of getting the player immersed in the game's world and supporting that aspect of role-playing I mentioned in the beginning. One of Pokémon's core themes across the franchise is the balance and harmony between humans and nature, and the Hoenn region is the place that arguably drives this theme home the hardest. Inspired by the farmlands of real-life Japan and mirroring the economic struggles that were going on in the Isahaya Bay in the 2000s, the conflict of Ruby and Sapphire centers around a group of environmental extremists in their pursuit of expanding either the land or the ocean. Going around this small island region, talking to the locals while tending to your berry plants every day, allows you to really sit back and smell the roses. Take a pause from the non-stop action that is the goal of getting badges, and really take in the scenery and the story that the land has to tell you, one berry at a time. Carrying over from gold, silver, and crystal was time progression, so the passage of time in your game would match up with your real life. This meant that your berry plants would react to your care and grow accordingly in real time. And with that came an entire system that Game Freak created to make the mini farming simulator feel as immersive as possible. The time it takes for a berry to grow is dependent on the berry itself, and they all have a total of 4 growth stages. Each stage takes a quarter of the berry's entire growth cycle, and at the end of every stage, the berry plant will be fully grown and ready for harvest. When the plant is grown, you have the same amount of time it took for the plant to bloom for you to get your berries, before the cycle begins again. Each plant can regrow up to 9 times before it is depleted. While you wait for that beautiful blooming, you can periodically water your plant with a Wailmer pail to help it grow. Watering the plant determines the berry's yield. What is yield, you're probably asking? Yield is the variable in the growth system that determines how many berries you'll get when a plant is fully grown. For example, if your lazy ass doesn't water your berry plant at all for every growth cycle, the plant will not die. It'll still fully bloom, however, it'll carry the minimum number of berries. Watering that plant will increase its yield, which will give you a better chance at receiving more berries at the end of the cycle. Watering your berries at least once per stage will give you the maximum yield, aka the maximum number of berries that the plant can carry. There's an entire mathematical formula for the process, and finding out this in-depth process for berry growth while researching for the video was fascinating. It really reminds you that making a video game is no easy feat, even for the seemingly smallest things. Moving forward, the Generation 4 games, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum would come on by, and they introduced 21 new types of berries, with 4 of them being exclusive to events, those being Mickle, Jabuka, Custap, and Roab. Contests are back, and berries serve the exact same purpose here, except with pastry-like poffins as opposed to Pokéblocks. The juicy part is that the Sinnoh region would tweak the berry growth system with the introduction of mulches and a new mechanic known as moisture drain rate. When you plant a berry, it will start its growth cycle with the maximum yield, and each plant has a moisture level range from 0 to 100. Starting at 100, the berry plant will lose moisture according to its own moisture drain rate every hour after it was planted. For example, an orange berry will lose 15 points of moisture every hour after being planted. Watering your berry plant will restore its moisture level back to 100. However, the timer assigned to the drainage of moisture does not reset. Basically, you're incentivized to keep track of your plants and water them consistently until they reach their final stage, as the quality of your plant fluctuates in real time. Mulch comes into play as a form of fertilizer that will change the trajectory of your plant's growth. Acquired from the Berry Master's House in Sinnoh, different types of mulch will have different effects. Growth mulch will increase growth by 75%, but also increase moisture drain rate by 50%. Conversely, damp mulch will decrease moisture drain rate by 50%, but increase the growth rate by 150%. So, you can either have your plant be ready for harvest faster in exchange for more frequent watering, or not feel pressure to water as often in exchange for a slower road to harvest. There's also sable and gooey mulch. The former, when used before planting, will make its harvest stage extended by 50%. The latter, when used before planting, will allow the berry plant to regrow 15 times before completely dying out. Despite a large part of Sinnoh's visual identity being centered on snow, this region would be the one to truly take the side activity of growing berries into a bona fide farming simulator. After all this expansion to the world of berries, things would come to a screeching halt for Generation 5. No new berries were introduced, and berry plants do not exist in Black and White or Black and White 2. At least, not offline. Berry farming would instead be a feature in the now defunct Dream World, where you would go online to grow your own plants. In this obsolete dream world, you would go to your garden that was near your dream home and get to work. Berries in this world grew 50% slower than they did in Gen 4. You start off with a small plot for farming, with more rows unlocked with the more dream points you have. Trainers from other worlds could visit your home and water your plants for you, and berry plants do not have a life cycle. Once it is in the harvest state, it will remain bloomed and ready for picking until you go and pick it, making the punishment factor for forgetting your plants non-existent. With the absence of contests meant that berries lost their secondary purpose as ingredients. However, you could trade berries for decorations for your dream world home. With the release of Pokémon X and Y, berry farming will make a comeback as a main side feature that wasn't reliant on the internet. Berry fields would see a big change in the mechanics for caring to our plants, and would be the most complex that the system has gotten. To start with, the berry fields are a plot of land with 6 rows of 6 plots for growing, alongside 2 composters that you use to create mulch with. Mulch and Kalos can be made with berries, and the type of mulch you get will be dependent on the berry you put in the composter. Mulch has some new functions in X and Y, such as affecting a berry's yield, how quickly their soil dries, and the chance of mutations. The most major of the new features, mutations are an exciting part of the system. As the name suggests, you can grow certain rare berries during your farming via crossbreeding. How this is achieved is by growing specific berries next to each other, which will create a new plant with 2 different berries attached. This is a rare occurrence, with the odds able to be manipulated, but possible nonetheless. There's actually a sort of branching path system for mutations, as there are certain berries that will only be created through crossbreeding berries from previous mutations. For example, the pomeg berry is a result from crossbreeding a Ayapapa berry and a mago berry. If you take a pomeg berry and grow it next to a cassib berry, you have a chance of getting a pitaya berry. The salic berry is a product of breeding the greppa and roselle berries, and if you crossbred a pitaya berry with the salic berry, you can get the maranga berry. Berries to berries to berries. Berryception. Should I make a game off of the number of times I've said the word berry in this video? Alongside mutations, the berry fields also bring 2 more new features in the form of weeds and pests. Like real-life gardening, weeds and bugs are the bane of your existence. Every 2 hours or so, weeds will show up on your plant. When the berry finishes its seedling stage, pests will occasionally appear on the plant as well. These 2 features serve as an extra box to check off of your plant's final yield. Removing both of these nuisances will help the chances of your berry coming out with its max yield. Speaking of yield, when determining the final result of your fully bloomed berry plant, the variables are the aforementioned weed and pest removal, watering, and the berry's minimum yield. If you use rich mulch on a plant, then you get a +2 to your final yield. Different berries have different values for each category, but the differences are minor enough that they won't make an impact on your gardening. However, some berries will take longer to harvest. After all the new variables that Kalos brought to the table, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire would go back to the basics, just like the original visit to Hoenn. No mulch, no weeds, no pests, just plant 'em, water 'em, harvest 'em. The formula for yields is slightly tweaked to fit the simpler routine, and growth times average between 16 to 32 hours, a stark contrast from X and Y's times, which ranged from 24 to 120 hours. If the berry fields were a little too extra for you to keep up with, then the Hoenn remakes will take you back to that simple familiarity of the GBA. However, this throwback would be short-lived, as once again, things would change in Generation 7. Sun and Moon, alongside the enhancements, featured no new berries, and would simplify the system for berry planting even more than Oros did. Now, berry farming has become entirely automated. So in these games, there exists a place called Isle Apany, which is one piece of Poképelago. In Isle Apany, you can put some berries in soft soil to grow plants, but unlike previous games where you were responsible for the process, now the farming is done by your Pokémon. You do not interact with your berry plants at all, and the only way you can interact with them is indirectly through island development and storing Pokebeans in the island's bean crate. Developing your island can improve the yield of your plants, and the Pokebeans can temporarily boost growth times. Other than that though, the simulation aspect of berry farming has been stripped away. There are some berry trees scattered around the Alola region, similar to Kalos, which can be interacted with to get some extra berries in your bag. The 7th generation of Pokemon would mark the end of the farming simulator, at least for right now. What became a key piece of a Pokemon game's side content and an enhancement to role-playing would eventually dissolve into their original conception. Sword and Shield would reintroduce berries as ingredients via curry, which is a vital part of one of these games' major side features, camping. It's a double-edged sword, because while I loved making curry and chilling at camp, and as I said at the start of the video, these games were what started my berry obsession, the farming simulator would be completely deaded. Now we're back at Generation 2, where we have berry trees located all around the Galar region, which give us a plethora of berries depending on how many times we shake them, and they automatically grow their stock back every 24 hours. We also get apricorns again, though their resurrection is frankly disrespectful, as they exist as a device for an in-game gacha machine that's fucking stupid. While there was no more farming, I love getting on these games every day to collect my berries like it's a daily task in an MMO, just like I did in Crystal and Heart Gold. And the curry decks alongside the camp feature was the centerpiece of my entire playthrough of Shield. Sadly, Paldea would come alongside Scarlet and Violet with a knife to gut the berries almost entirely. Not only is berry farming once again absent, but so is their existence as ingredients, as the new sandwich feature does away with them in favor of separate purchased ingredients. While their presence in side content and more recreational activities is now gone, they still have 22 years of history and impact as held items to their name. With 68 berries, they cover innumerable amounts of strategy and problem solving for your team to utilize. I may have taken this video down a slightly pessimistic angle, trying to allude to berries being scrapped as role-playing tools, but that would not be the case. While you won't be farming or cooking with them in the Paldea region, berries and modern Pokemon are role-playing tools on their own. Let me clarify. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned how when it comes to role-playing in this franchise, the Pokemon themselves and the team you make can do a lot to create a story and identity for your trainers. Berries can work to the same effect as well, at least if you're extra enough like me. Yes, maybe in Gen 4 you role-played as a breeder, with berry farming being a key part of your trainer's in-world occupation. Or perhaps you played as an aspiring contest star, and you spent your nights farming berries to get the perfect Poffins. It may seem like there's no way to incorporate these items into your RP fantasy in games like Scarlet and Violet, but that's where you can take it back to your team. As of 2022, there are 8 moves in the franchise that are made for berries or at least incorporate them in an effect, like Fling. There are also 8 abilities that pertain to the use of berries. You can make a team that tells the story of a berry farmer by using these moves and abilities in junction with their use as battle items. You can take this a step further, like playing X and Y and forming a berry-themed team while also making the berry fields an integral part of your playthrough. Yes, I am planning a new playthrough of X centered around berries. I am giving birth to Pokemon's ultimate berry maniac. While you have many options for held items within the berry encyclopedia for either your grandiose role-playing vision or for your competitive ventures, you likely won't have access to everything pre-Galar. Why? Because just like certain Pokemon, there exists mythical berries. I made that up, there is no such thing as a mythical berry, but some of them are extremely rare to obtain and, in some cases, never actually released. Throwing it back to Generation 3, there existed a short-lived add-on for the GBA called the e-reader. Sort of like the amiibo feature of the 3DS and Switch, but from the 2000s, you would hook up the e-reader device to your system and swipe an e-reader card through it to get exclusive content for your game. A fair amount of these cards were made for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, among them being cards for a handful of exclusive berries, those being the following: Pumpkin, Drash, Eggplant, Strib, Chillin, Nutpea, Genema, Kuo, Yago, Toga, Niniku, and Topo. Of these, only half of them were released outside Japan. Despite the exclusivity, the only interesting thing about them are their designs and names, as they have either no usable function or do what other berries can already do. They do make for quite the novelty and collectible piece if you're into that sort of thing. If you put one of these berries on your Pokemon and then transfer them to your Gen 4 game, the berries would transform into the Enigma berry. What's interesting is that the Enigma berry did not exist in Gen 3, but its name was used as a label for the e-reader berries, the Enigma berries, if you will. But as all of those were not brought back for Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, the title for these berries would become one of its own. Unlike the irrelevance of its predecessors, the Enigma berry will restore a fourth of a Pokemon's health when hit by a super effective move. Transforming the e-reader berries into the Enigma via Palpark is the only way to obtain it in Gen 4, and it would continue to be a rare, event-exclusive item until Sword and Shield, where it became obtainable via trees just like the others. The Enigma wouldn't be the only event-exclusive berry in the franchise, as the earlier mentioned Mickle, Jabuka, Custap, and Roat berries were also only obtainable through events until Gen 8, where, just like the Enigma berry, they would now be easily obtainable via trees. You then also have berries that are available in-game, but you have to go out of your way to get them, whether that's getting them from the Berry Master, telling his wife a special password, secret base buddies, or winning 200 super battles. Some of these berries have really beneficial effects for battles, and can be useful for competitive play or even some post-game content if you fancy that stuff. Berries have lived a very long, interesting life, being the most multifaceted item of the franchise, with only differing uses as items, but also bringing different forms of gameplay in the series. From battles to contests to farming simulators and curry, these colorful pixelated fruits are some of the most fascinating and important pieces of Pokemon's DNA, and are a major player in the series' world building and role-playing. If I made you more interested in berries than before, that's great. If you're amazed by how someone sat here and made such a long video talking about Pokemon fruit, I appreciate it, that was the goal. Pokemon as a franchise has always done a great job at promoting imagination and creativity. Thousands of party members, different Pokeballs to catch them in, thousands of moves, and hundreds upon hundreds of items. You create your own story and identity through the game's mechanics, and the many different regions act as a canvas for you to create on. Pokemon stories are simple and, at times, a non-factor. But the relationship between humans and nature, those conflicts that try to disturb the balance, and helping to preserve nature and witnessing the beauty of it not just through Pokemon, but through the environments, really makes you feel like you're living in this world. Berries help tell the story of nature, the story of people who live their lives hand in hand with it. They also can help you tell your story and how your legacy in the world of Pokemon unfolds. Or maybe I'm just insane.